The Acorn People by Ron Jones. Illustrated by Tom Parker. Day 1. Children spilled from cars and buses. It was an eerie sight. Parents carefully picked children from their perches and placed them in wheelchairs. There was an open-mouthed silence. The woods and paths of Camp Wigan were accustomed to troops of running feet and the noise of children at play. With these wheelchair children, there was only silence. It was as if the woods themselves were watching the unfolding of chairs and the lifting of bodies. All life seemed to stop. In procession, the parents wheeled their children towards awaiting counselors. I was a counselor, a target of this pilgrimage. Like everyone around me, I didn't know what to say. Oh, what do you say to a parade of children who move towards you only by the energy of their parents' insistence? Who move towards you with swollen heads of gargantuan proportion, with birth scars that have left the eyes without sight or the body without arms and legs? Children who seem drained of expression, pulled into convulsions by unseen strings, pallid in color and spirit, beings without visible life, crumpled and stuffed into wheelchairs, covered with blankets to ward off not the cold, but the vision of disfigurement. The camp nurse had given us a one-day orientation about handicapped children, but to see this mass of injury stunned the brain. There were perhaps 120 children in all. They seemed old for their age. I remember the nurse saying, "Most will not live past their teen years. It is nature's way." She described the hydrocephalic children with heads that looked like melons about to burst, and the disease of multiple sclerosis, which ate away at the muscles, leaving the body without energy or movement. The children who had mongoloid faces and a distant stare. Children with an epileptic chemistry, which at any moment could jerk the body into an unconscious spasm. Children living with an unexplained polio attack that would cruelly freeze their legs in place, leaving the rest of the body and mind to wonder at the reason for this paralysis. And finally, the children who entered life without vision or a hand or perhaps a face. The transfer of children from parent to camp staff was like a precious stamp being traded by collectors. No sign of real welcome or excitement. The stamp had value, but no voice. It was one more exchange. Parents, weary of the drive and the emotion of parting, didn't say much. They paused, mentioned how nice the camp looked, and said goodbye. Counselors welcomed their new responsibility with an equal degree of decorum. There were 2 counselors for each cabin of 5 children. I shared counseling duties with Dominic Cavelli from New York. He was a tall Italian youth with a slight but strong body, deep brown eyes that told you of his concern and love for children, and a soft manner and smile that moved across his face whenever he was about to speak. He was after a career working with handicapped children, whereas I had placed myself in this position merely for the job. Oh, I rationalized about serving others and compassion for kids, but behind this mask was a simple wish to have a good-paying job for a few weeks and to enjoy summer camp life. I had been a PE student and athlete in college. The thought of playing with kids, swimming all day, and taking long hikes had drawn me to this place. My illusions were quickly clouded and washed away. I wasn't about to frolic with these children. We would be lucky, I thought, if we could even take a few steps together. As the children were assembled for cabin assignments, I wondered at this mass of humanity before me. These children with hollowed-out faces and nervous twitches. What were they thinking? Did they think? Or even feel? They all looked alike. Boys and girls, inseparable by a common heart. Did they have hopes for the future? Or was life a dulling repetition of survival? Or worse, some kind of perverted game? I didn't have time to think. There was work to do. Every movement required a tug and a pull. Just crossing the camp from assembly point to cabin took 20 minutes per child. Some could be pushed, others had to be carried or patiently guided. Dominic and I, like the other counselors, swept back and forth, freighting luggage. children, and the ditty bag that would inevitably spill to the ground. We didn't have any experience at this task, and the camp wasn't set up for this kind of care. Each cabin had 3 steps that became hurdles. You can't wheel a chair straight up a set of stairs. I tried that with one kid and spilled him head first. Everything had to be learned. The simplest task was an ordeal. The camp was divided into 2 rows of cabins. Boys on one side, girls on the other. At one end of the row stood the campground, camp bathroom, dining hall, swimming pool, and flagpole. The flagpole had a large speaker on it that barked a greeting to all campers and played songs left over from the Boy Scouts who normally inhabit the camp. In the midst of this orchestrated hello, I was silently cursing toilets that didn't have grab bars. No sooner had one kid gotten unpacked and comfortable than it was off to the bathroom. What had always been a simple and normal act became a trial. Pants had to be pulled over cumbersome braces that grabbed and pinched at anything within reach. I had never changed someone's pants, much less balanced a child on the toilet only to be told in crying sobs that I don't have to go now. Back with the pants, lifting and tugging until at last I realized I'm sitting in the wheelchair and a wet child is now sitting in my lap. It would be humorous once, but this struggle becomes routine. It covers every minute and every thought, grading and shredding away any pretense or possibility for even the simplest of interaction. Every move, be it brushing teeth or simply rolling over, requires assistance. I feel like a slave and I resent it. The first evening meal was something I looked forward to. At last the chance to sit down and eat. Dominic and I got our kids down in the hall by moving in shifts. At the table, the loudspeaker once again reminded us we were on foreign turf. There was a Boy Scout prayer and then food. I started eating, then realized that half the kids couldn't feed themselves. With unshielded anger, I started pumping spoonfuls of peas and potatoes into open mouths. Any semblance of goodwill or sympathy was gone. My liberal do-goodism lasted one afternoon, and I wanted out. By evening, I was exhausted and angry. I questioned the camp, the loudspeaker that kept us moving, and myself. I couldn't get close to the kids, and I didn't want to. A fear emerged in my mind that this illness surrounding me would somehow rub off. That if I touched a disfigured limb or body, I could be poisoning myself. In a nightmare, I dreamed of children's legs and heads unscrewing, parts of bodies coming off in my hands.